Welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, the Football Grump, and we've got a mailbag. We're going to clean up the Broncos' loss, hit everything on it. We're going to talk Shane Bowen at the start, so we're going to start with a little bit of negative. But I think this is actually a more positive mailbag than you would expect coming off of a historic collapse. Grump, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm probably one of the most infuriating Giants fans right now because I took a lot more positive away from this game than I think a lot of people did. And you have every right to be like really annoyed in the
The
small
negatives are
term window.
constant. Like, they're
Yeah.
not like new negatives. It's kind of just the same old stuff. And then it's like, all right, I'm still excited about Dart and a couple other things.
Well, I would also say that like the positives were more positive than I expected, right? Like I didn't think we would score 30 points in this game. So I didn't think that we would shut them out for 3 quarters. So there were a lot of really positive things to take away from this. Obviously, I'm incredibly bitter that we lost, especially in that fashion, heartbroken. But there's a lot of really positive to take away from this game.
Yeah, and of course, we're gonna talk Shane Bowen and the defense as a whole, which not happy with. Before we get into this episode is brought to you by some special people. We got David Waldman. He's not a bald man, he's a Wald man. Harvey Orgel Redenbacher. Dylan McDonald. You better believe it or not, the guy never been to McDonald's in his life. Logan Smith. Um, that's a very generic name, Logan Smith. Smith Logan. We got CJ. Um, who was this a famous CJ? CJ Uzoma. People forget I replaced him on the football show. Bill Caulfield. His name is William, but he said, please call me Bill. Okay, Bill. Matt Schultheus. His thesis statement is that the Giants suck. And then Josh Murphy. What can go wrong? He believes in Josh's law. Grump, who are these special people?
These special people went to patreon.com/Giants Nation, Bobby, and they subscribe for one of 2 tiers where they could receive stickers in the mail from you. They also get entered into a free monthly t-shirt raffle. And most importantly, they get access to hang out with us while we record these episodes live. And they also get access to weekly game tape breakdowns.
You look glad you did. Take it away, Steve.
Mail time.
Mail time. The mail's here. Come on. Bye, guys.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
Thanks, Steve from Blues Clues. Grump, let's get into the mail.
First piece of mail in the mailbag is from Anashi at Anashi Maps 24. Is the secondary not performing well attributed to Shane Bowen's scheme, their own performance, or both? And what could be done differently to help change that? Loaded question.
Yeah, so this is basically talk about Shane Bowen, the defense, the fourth quarter collapse. So I watched the film, bro, did the film review. I put, this is the longest film review I've ever done, by the way. I put 18 plays from the fourth quarter because it was a collapse on many people and offensively included too. The first quarter of film was like exciting. Like Bowen was rotating coverages. He was disguising looks. He was sending pressure to get Dex one-on-ones. He did some sim pressure stuff. They weren't playing any man. Well, I'm not saying I don't want them to play any man, but like they didn't play any man until the second quarter. And I'm like, okay, well, this is carryover from the Eagles game. And then it kind of went away from that. Even in the second and third quarter, you saw them go away from it pretty good. And the Broncos, were throwing swing passes and getting balls tipped at the line of scrimmage. Like, the Broncos didn't help very much after that. But the fourth quarter, it just all went terrible, right? Like, and like going drive by drive in a sense. Like they had a drive where Abdul had the sack and they took the penalty, the holding went 1st and 20. 3 straight plays of playing like extremely soft zone. Soft zone can sometimes be a buzz phrase of just zone coverage, but I'm talking like linebackers playing at 15 yards of depth with 3 players underneath. Like you can't do that. And again, if you're going to take a penalty that gets you out of 2nd and 13 to make it 1st and 20, well, they just made it 2nd and 11 the next play because like the easiest of easy checkdowns of all time. And they do that 3 plays in a row. And then, 4th down, they get a defensive pass interference, and then they get back into the soft zone again. There was a run play where they had no defensive end to the side of a toss, right? The 37-yard run by J.K. Dobbins. They got Abdul Carter at inside linebacker, and there's just no defensive end there. So they toss it to the left, and they just have the best numbers you could ever ask for in a run play. Their run defense as a whole is just based off of somebody just making a play. And again, that is run defense a little bit in the NFL. But like outstanding plays by Adebo and Alexander stopped 2 huge runs on a team that gave up 150 rushing yards. Bo Nix is 31st in pressured completion percentage. They didn't pressure him, right? They only blitz 18% of the time. And this was not an offensive line where you're like, oh, we could take advantage of, right? They're they're maybe the best offensive line in football right now as a pass blocking unit. That being said, I do want to share the other side of this grump too. The players sucked in the end of the game. After that drive where they played the soft zone, they get a 3rd and 11. They play man coverage. Drew Phillips gets beat badly. 2 plays later, they run a cover 0 all-out blitz. Drew Phillips and Deontay Banks don't tackle. Deontay Banks gets beat in man coverage. That drop 8 play, I hate that. And we could talk about that play individually. I hate that play call. But no matter what, if Drew Phillips just doesn't give up on the play, it's not converted. RJ Harvey, but also had a touchdown where 2 guys were uncovered because somebody did, miss their assignment. So we're going to talk about, like, I'm going to ask you and I'm going to answer too, would you fire Shane Bowen? My answer is yes. But it's just the same old with Shane Bowen. Like, again, we talked about on last week's mailbag of hopefully it's not a one-off because we've seen one-offs before with Shane Bowen. And through 1 quarter, I was like, oh, it's not. After that, it kind of went out the window and it reverted to the same old stuff.
So, I mean, I agree. It is a little bit of both. Shane Bowen did his Shane Bowen thing, but the players kind of fell short. And I think part of what factored into Shane Bowen, I think, again, it's hard to tell because even in the Eagles game, super late in the game, we started seeing some of this slip right into the game. It's just that the Eagles were very demoralized, deflated, and they were just not hanging in there. I think that the Jaxson Dart pick did kind of give a boost to the Broncos when they needed it, because after a score, you get another really quick score, picking up a turnover on the plus side of the field. So I think that there was this added boost of juice, I guess, some energy into where the Eagles didn't have that, right? But I think also that part of the reason that Shane Bowen slipped into that is because he's not doing that because that's who he is, like running these aggressive schemes, matching coverages, switching up coverages, running stunts and twists, blitzing. I don't think that that's who Shane Bowen is. It's not in his DNA. He's doing it because he's told to do it, whatever. And I think that a lot of that has to do with his lack of trust in players and more trust in just, this is how defenses work. This is how my system works kind of mentality. And you get to the end of the game and you have players start dropping like flies. And now you take that lack of trust in players in situations where they have to be good and do the right thing. And you have guys like Bo Braid playing. You have, Deontay Banks, who shouldn't have anybody's trust in the building. I don't really know if he does or if he doesn't, because he did have a role for this team for a while. But you have all these guys subbing in where they're not your starting guys, and they're all on the back end, all of them. And I think that factors in a little bit to him just kind of dialing back to what he's comfortable with, what he knows, what he likes to call. And to your point, like, the players didn't play, right? You had bad players in bad positions. You had Deontay Banks jumping in on the inside instead of keeping contained, giving up plays. Drew Phillips giving up plays when he's put on the spot. So it is a mix, but I do think that the injuries that piled up in game at the end there did factor a little bit into his decision making. If you're gonna ask me if you're firing Shane Bowen right now, I think in my head he's fired, but I'm not going to fire him if I'm in charge. I'm not going to fire him unless there's somebody I think in the building could possibly be a defensive coordinator or would do a better job or something like that. Like, I'm not doing it just because he really is to blame for a lot of the failures of this team and not, not being where you are and where you should be in the standings. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just doing it because, whatever. That just like instills more chaos into the season where, again, big picture, I'm looking at where is this team headed? Have I added the right pieces? Are we in the right direction kind of thing? And if you're hoping that you're keeping your job, if you're Joe Shane or Brian Dable, right? I just don't think I'm doing that unless I think I have a better option currently on the staff.
So here is why I would fire him, besides just being a bad defensive coordinator. I was, thinking about this question a lot. This is the one I spent the most time on. Obviously, the film review was a big part of looking at this defense and what were the issues and how did it break down. It's always one of those things where, we can do as good of a job as we can watching the broadcast and rewatching the broadcast on Sunday, but you inevitably are just going to miss some things that they were doing defensively because you can't see the safeties and you just don't have the time to watch all 11 or all 22 on every play. And so I'm like, oh, they did blitz a couple times in that fourth quarter, but again, it was only a couple times. But I asked Twitter, I was like, because I was like, I can't think of like, what is he best at? And really the only answer that I thought made sense, besides all the sarcastic answers, was like, he's simple. His defense is simple to where guys aren't missing assignments. But again, he even said that's a backhanded compliment as well too. And if you're that type of defense where it's like, hey, what we do is very simple, well, you better be great at the details, right? That's how you run that simplified defenses. You got to be great at the details. As a run defense, if you're playing simplistic, you have to have guys that just win consistently and beat double teams. If they don't have that outside of Dexter Lawrence, and Dexter Lawrence, for some reason, is getting moved by double teams this year. So I would fire him, and I would have done it this week too. I would have obviously fired him in the offseason. And to be honest, I don't like the answer of like, well, who could have they went and got? Go to college, be innovative, try and find the next guy that no one is really noticing, right? Not just the list of top 8 best available guys in the NFL to be defensive coordinator. Get creative, go outside the box. Hire a damn linebacker coach from Georgia and just try and be early on a guy. So I would. And you say, well, who would you replace him with? That is the most difficult part of this. Andre Patterson was a co-DC in Minnesota. Marquand Manuel was a DC for the Falcons. Neither one of those guys inspire me. But if Shane Bowen is conservative, reverts to basic stuff, well, then somebody else can do that. At least do that, right? You're not It's not like if you fired Brian Dable or Mike Kafka and you put, Tim Kelly, who was the Titans offensive coordinator, as the tight end coach and put him as OC. I'm telling you, we're getting worse as an offense if we do that. I've watched the Tim Kelly offense, the film of it. It's terrible. With this, I'm not worried about that. Not to say that it fixes it, but they should have. Like, again, I get also like let me say this. The scoring D this year, they're ranked 23rd, right? They're 26th in passing D, 25th in rushing defense, 30th in yards per carry allowed, 26th in EPA per play. They have this crazy pass rush, right? Well, they're 18th in sacks. They're 18th in pressure rate. Last year, they were 21st in points per game, 29th in EPA per play. Like they don't stunt as much as he did in Tennessee. That was like the one thing that he did do a lot in Tennessee. They don't do that very much here. Like players aren't inspired by him, right? There's, I know Brian Burns tried to clean it up a little bit, but like it's kind of a fact. The players are not inspired by him. Like they just, like you said, like I said, it's like the best thing to say is like he keeps it simple. But even then, they have all these mental mistakes where Tyler Nubin's not playing this the right way, and this guy doesn't reroute or whatever. So I'm just like, why are we even keeping him around? Where the conversation about like the firing of Shane Bowen, I had no expectation of that on Monday. One, you start to get the rumblings if there is even a consideration. I don't think they even considered it. But everyone kind of looks at like that drop 8 coverage, and like that's why we got to fire Shane Bowen. And we talked about it on the show with Jordan Renan. Brian Dable has a huge part of that, right? It's the end of the game. They have plenty of time. They plan for these scenarios before the game. Like Brian Dable should own that specifically as much as Shane Bowen, right? But also, it's not that play that bothers me about Shane Bowen. That play bothers me. It's everything else, and as much as Brian Dable is in charge of the defense and stuff, he's not leading defensive meetings, he's not calling defensive plays, like, this is Shane Bowen's defense. Um, so I would. Like, I was kinda not really in on the conversation of firing him, not because I didn't believe in him, because I thought he should have been fired last year, uh, but the more I think about it, I was like, "You know what? An in-season firing would be the best thing, even if it, quote, unquote, takes away the shield that he is for Brian Dable and puts more of the buck on him."
I mean, he's certainly that, right? Like, the ability to point the finger at somebody else at the end of the season is definitely something that can't be ignored. I think the biggest thing for me with Shane Bowen is that you went out and got without a doubt that the best part of this roster is probably the pass rush, right? Especially when Malik Neighbors is hurt.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and it just doesn't feel like they're being put in a position to be as good as they can be, right? Like Army, be all you can be. There's not enough stunts and twists. There's not enough disguised pressures. And what is there seem to come after public outcry, which just tells me that it's just not something you want to do. It's not something you trust to do. I would be scheming everything I could to make the best players on the defense be in the best situation. You know what I mean? And as good as the Broncos offensive line is, Bo Nix is not somebody if he's my quarterback, I would be shitting bricks if he's under pressure constantly. I would be like, we're not winning this game. He's under pressure. He's not good under pressure. Throws the ball away. Doesn't really judge things downfield really, really well when he's under pressure or on the move. And we saw that when he was on the move, he was overthrowing guys left and right.
Yep.
Like he's not good when things fall apart. And I just don't feel like the best players on this team are being put in a position to have the best results. And and again, that speaks to if you think that Andre Patterson, which it's the first name that comes to mind, it's not super inspiring, but he is kind of the defensive line coach. So if you feel like he's someone that can get the most out of that, and I think he's probably a pretty inspiring guy to his players, then maybe then it is the move. But nobody really jumps off the page to me on the roster sheet. That's just like this is going to make such a huge difference. Like I'm firing him at the end of the year anyway. My question to you really is whether they fire him in season or not is kind of irrelevant because you're not super inspired by whoever they hire on an interim basis, right? But what about next year? Is there somebody out there? Are you looking at Denard Wilson possibly from Tennessee?
Yeah, and I know Tennessee it fell apart, but I think Denard Wilson was pretty like people like what he was doing, and I'm not looking at defensive coordinator lists right now, right? Like, if anything, I haven't even started looking at head coaching lists. Like, if we get to the end of the year, like I'm not even talking about Shane Bowen at that point. Like, I am talking about Joe Shane, and Brian Dable, unless this offense is just lights out for the rest of the year and they actually win games, then it's a different conversation. I'm just not even ready for that. Like, I think it's well known. I think Joe Shane and Brian Dable should be fired. I'm also not calling for either of those two guys to be fired in season. I don't think that helps this team at all, unless it just got super toxic in the locker room. So like and Joe Shane, fire him. When it like that doesn't. But like I actually think firing Shane Bowen could spark some life into this defense. And again, whoever takes over, like it's. Oh, well, it's the same playbook. But defense, everyone has the kind of the same playbook on defense unless you're one of these, like, heavy blitz guys. Like, it doesn't take anything crazy to be a little more creative on defense. Like, defense is very much like, hey, there's 5 different coverages. There's different ways you can run it, and then you add, like, hybrid ways to, play certain formations. So, like, you don't need a ton to, like, be a better play caller on defense. So I would. But can we address the 3-man rush drop 8 play before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, go for it.
So I do want to talk about that because obviously there's bad player execution on that of Drew Phillips, and Bo Nix was not throwing to that receiver. He was throwing to Cortland Sutton on the dig route, and he missed the throw with the cleanest of clean pockets because they rushed 3. So 2 things. 1, you can't rush 3. You cannot just let Bo Nix be as a guy who struggles with accuracy, and he still ended up missing, but struggles with accuracy, just get the cleanest of clean pockets. And why is Dexter Lawrence not on the field?
That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
I think we all fundamentally disagree with this. But I could also, the counter to that would be like, okay, let's say they rush 4. They still kept 6 in to block. They might block it up just as well, and you don't have an extra defender in coverage. But if Drew Phillips does not give up on the play, it doesn't matter. They win. I don't even know if they win the game, but they at least win the play. The issue is, though, if you're going to say, well, if they just executed it better, it would have worked. Same goes for the Broncos. Like, the dig route was open for Cortland Sutton. If Bo Nix just, with the cleanest of clean pockets, just waits a quarter of a second more and throws an accurate ball to Cortland Sutton, that play would have went for more yards than what it did. So if you want to do the execute thing, that can go both ways. And I think it's more reasonable to ask Cortland Sutton to win on a dig route with, Deontay Banks cheating outside leverage than it is, for the Giants to do what they should have done. So, and again, so as I knew there is like a whole execution versus play call thing. I think both people are right. The issue is that it was a bad play call because the Broncos should have hit that anyways. So I just wanted to clear that up before we move on.
One last thing on that too, in terms of rushing 3 versus rushing 4, right? When you're going into that mindset defensively anyway, of dropping more guys into coverage and playing off and playing it safe, you're kind of conceding that you're not going to get to the quarterback. But when you have 3 guys, you're giving him clear vision of the field. At least if you rush 4 guys, even though they're keeping 6 in for max protect or whatever, you can get hands up. And we saw it throughout the whole game, but especially at the end of the game, where just getting hands up, getting in the way, knocking down passes, and just getting in his vision, just getting in his line of sight to seeing the field is at least a minor tactical advantage. And hopefully one of those 4 guys rushing is Dexter Lawrence in the middle, right?
Yep.
So I have a huge problem with just rushing 3 in and of itself.
Yep, it's bad.
All right. Next question. Next question comes from Zach Morris. Get out of here, Preppy. At Zach Morris 21. If you were Shane, what wide receivers would you be calling about, and what type of trade packages would you be willing to give up for them? I'd call on Waddle and offer a 2027 second and a 2026 fourth or fifth.
Have you ever seen those Zach Morris's trash videos?
I saw like 1 or 2 of them, yeah.
I used to love those. And they'd explain how he's like the most problematic person in the world.
It is a really, really bizarre show in retrospect.
So with a wide receiver, I was worried that we didn't cover it on last week's mailbag and they were going to pull the trigger on Thursday or Friday when the smoke was there. But I'm happier that we waited now because it hasn't happened, number one. And number 2, it's happening after a loss. So people's thoughts are a little more realistic. I wish we would have just won and I would have really been in on it. I would be a little bit in on trading for a wide receiver, even though the guys that I have seem unrealistic, right? Like, because I've become less of a pick hugger. I hope that's not me overcorrecting to all the bad picks the Giants had made in the draft. But like, I've become more down to be like, hey, young player who should be playing for another 4 or 5 years at a great level, trade the picks for that guy and keep him around. I just become that. So like, I'm not an insider, but a couple of people have told me like they were trying to get Jalen Waddle, but like Dolphins want a first. Giants obviously are not going to offer a first rounder, blah, blah, blah. But maybe stuff changes there. Chris Olave, I don't think there's anything there. So it's like after that, there's really no young guys that you're keeping around. And like, again, if you want to say Garrett Wilson, but Garrett Wilson is not being traded by the New York Jets. And then you're like, all right, well, Jacoby Myers for a day 3 pick. It's like, all right, well, I wouldn't say that's bad, but that doesn't help us long term. But I really don't want to see Jaxson Dart have to play his entire rookie season out of 12 personnel. Even though when Slayton comes back, you can do 11 with Lil Jordan Humphrey. But like, as much as the game was fun on Monday or Sunday, our outside receivers had 0 catches in that game. So if you could get a young player in here for the long term, but a rental of an old guy that doesn't make much sense to me. Like, I know he's probably looking to go to a playoff contender, but like, I would rather sign Tyler Lockett, who had 600 yards last year, than trade for Jacoby Myers.
No, I 100% agree. Yeah, I mean, Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave are the guys that would really be my target list. I'd be calling. I would stay in touch with them. I know that Miami's saying a first-round pick for Jalen Waddle. We'll see if it stays at a first-round pick, right? Like, you're always gonna have, a line in the sand, and if you're really situations change over a couple of weeks. The trade deadline is not this week, so I would keep that number on speed dial, right? Um and in terms of what I give up, like I know people I agree with you, right? Like draft picks are gambles. I know people value them. They're super valuable assets and you can always look back or whatever, but anything anything outside of a first round pick, remember, is a gamble. There are surefire can't miss guys that people miss on just about every single year. And it's just a matter of when you trade these high value picks away, if you are really trading it away for like fair, like you said, so like a young guy who's got the talent, right? So not trading away like for Brandon Cooks, for instance. But yeah, Jalen Waddle, I mean, like I would be willing to possibly part with a second round pick next year for it. And think about this. Where in the where in the depth chart of positions that need to be addressed in the offseason does second wide receiver really rank for you? And if you'd consider using a second round pick to draft a wide receiver, which I would consider, I'm not saying like they have to do it or whatever, but like if the draft board falls a certain way, like if you find yourself being like, yeah, we really need a wide receiver badly to complement Malik Neighbors, it's got to be a guy that can go up there and be a number one if Neighbors is hurt. It can't be Darius Slayton. So if you're considering using a second round pick, then just remember, like Jalen Waddle's sort of the sure thing. Like you already know who he is at the NFL level and what he does. Now, I'm not saying I would. I'm just saying I wouldn't rule out a second round pick if it's me at the helm. If it comes down to it,
The
why
thing
not?
that worries me with that is if you trade Jalen Waddle for a second round pick, you now have a possibility of having a brand new GM and no day two picks.
But that's. I mean, this is operating under the assumption that I am the current GM, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm Joe Shane right now. So I'm and again, like this is sort of a way of keeping your job.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like if you pull this off and Jalen Waddle is what wins you games down the stretch and that's going to keep your job, then that's something to consider, I guess. I'm sure if it were me in that situation, I'd be considering it. And the other thing to consider too, when you're assessing like how badly this team needs a wide receiver of that caliber, is remembering that you're not just getting Malik Neighbors back next year. Like it is an unknown in what capacity you're getting Malik Neighbors back. We don't know the exact reason why Dexter Lawrence doesn't seem to be Dexter Lawrence right now, but the idea that it's his elbow is at least a working theory, right? And that's just a dislocated elbow. That's not a athletic outside wide receiver and an ACL. I never would have guessed that a dislocated elbow would make Dexter Lawrence look the way he's looked this year after the year he had last year. So it's just worth considering that you may not be getting the Malik Neighbors you know and love week 1 next year. It may take a while for him to get back to that sort of form. So when you're assessing the need at wide receiver, keeping that in mind that Neighbors might be 75% of Malik Neighbors, I think that absolutely factors into how badly you need to address the wide receiver spot.
Yeah. So again, my eyes go to Jalen Waddle, which I guess is kind of unrealistic. You haven't really even heard his name be shopped around there besides us just saying it as fans, and then Jalen Waddle on Instagram doing the thing and making us feel like he's gonna get his first real Instagram post that wasn't an ad since November last year, and then Ryan Disdeer pulled up the fact that he's the only other time he tweeted that caption of ... was like right before his contract. Again, this is where we are right now. But it's just, I just don't like, they're like the middle ground ones. I don't really inspire me. Like Rashid Shaheed, he's an expiring deal. He's 27 years old. His best year is 720 yards in 2023. I don't know if I'm going crazy for Rashid Shaheed, even though he would be a big upgrade to what the Giants are dealing with right now. And again, he's an expiring contract. You're not going to franchise tag him, so you do run the risk of him leaving for somebody somewhere else too.
Yeah, I mean that becomes a trade and
yeah, I guess you'd have to have a deal
substitution.
done at the moment if you trade it for Rashid Shaheed. So
Yeah, and there's probably a trade in there that I would agree to for Shaheed. But I don't think it's something that New Orleans would agree to. You know what I mean? I'm just going to put a low value on that one. But again, we don't know the situation with New Orleans and what they think of Shaheed. They're sort of rebuilding. It's Kellen Moore's first year there. They might be at an all-out fire sale on Shaheed. You know, I don't know. So I wouldn't necessarily say no, but it would not be some blockbuster trade. It would not be something I think Giants fans would balk at personally.
All right.
Next
Next question.
question is from Quick2 at Quick Season 2. Is it fair to say that Nick Bonito is a product of the system?
Who? Didn't hear his name at all.
He was on the stat sheet. He had one tackle.
He had a quarterback hit, and it was the play where Jaxson Dart was literally in the pocket running from right to left, back to right. He got a nice quarterback hit on that as he completed a ball down to Wando Robinson down the field. Excellent job, Nick Bonito. Definitely worth running your mouth. Like he can't win Defensive Player of the Year after that. I won't let. I will slander him. This is more of a question about Andrew Thomas. I want to talk about Thomas. I don't even know if we did anything on him outside of when he came back from the injury. Dude, in 4.5 games, he has 1 quarterback hit and 2 pressures allowed. Like, he's having his best year in pass blocking efficiency, second in the NFL to Garrett Bowles. He's first on true passes. He has no penalties, unlike Garrett Bowles, who has 2. Like, he just shut down someone who was viewed as a Defensive Player of the Year favorite and made it look easy. He's been beautiful in the run game. I think it's correlated to the run success. Like, Grump, he has to win awards this year. If he doesn't, like, he's getting robbed of this, where I'm going to be actually pissed off. Again, I've said before, there's only a few things I'm living for with this Giants team. Jaxson Dart's development is one. Andrew Thomas has to be all pro and Pro Bowl, and not just miss the Pro Bowl and we say, oh, it's bullshit. Like, no, he actually needs to be in the Pro Bowl. He needs to be in Orlando. Are you there, Grump? You look frozen on my side.
You look frozen on my side, but I hear you okay.
All right, I can hear you okay, so that doesn't matter. People don't want to look at us anyways.
That's really, really weird. I'm hoping that it's not me. I'm hoping that it gets fixed. Andrew Thomas is without a doubt like probably the quietest, bright. Whoa, what is going on?
I don't know. Just keep going, but you're back and I see you now. So
Okay. All right. That's good. Andrew Thomas is the quietest bright spot on this team. You know, Cam Scatterbo, Jaxson Dart are getting so much of the attention. Abdul Carter's getting a lot of attention. Brian Burns is getting a lot of attention. Andrew Thomas should be getting like national attention. And I hope that his performance on Sunday gets picked up by like Brian Baldinger and amplified everywhere, and that he keeps highlighting him week after week, because you're right. The awards are kind of needed right now. He's a huge reason why this run game is getting better, and more on that later. He's shutting things down, and I think part of the reason is A, he's really, really good. B, he's possibly at his healthiest he's been in a couple of years now, because he's always been battling like this constant lower leg thing here or there. And I think mostly because he's not played healthy, he's played hurt and continued to hurt it. And I think also Jaxson Dart brings out some of the best in this O-line by not forcing them into bad situations and, you know, not them getting demoralized. The offense is rumbling. It's working a lot better. And I mean, you said that he shut down the Defensive Player of the Year favorite. He didn't just shut him down. I mean, he ghosted him. He vacated his spot where he plays all of his snaps, switched, dropped into coverage. I mean, that to me is when a player is so good that you change what you do. The best defense in the NFL changed what they did because of Andrew Thomas. Really let that sink in. It's not so much that Nick Bonito is a product of the system or that he owned Nick Bonito. It's that they didn't even think they could win with Nick Bonito against him. And that, to me, is the biggest compliment.
like, and granted, Jermaine Illuminor is doing a great job on the right side too, right? Like he's 6th in pass blocking efficiency this year. Like they combined have 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and 7 pressures allowed. That's less combined total than 46 individual offensive tackles this year. So like Illuminor obviously isn't on Thomas's level, but he's playing at a phenomenal rate too. He shut them down. And dumbass Broncos fans were like, how does these stats line up? We had 4 sacks. Well, I'm sorry, when you run a naked boot and you're unblocked, sorry, the guard doesn't get credit for giving up that sack. So, like, these guys have been awesome. So it's like you can't even just send a guy to the other side and have him get, his wins against Nate Solder or Matt Peart or, fill in the blank terrible right tackle we've seen play for the Giants, or Evan Neal. How did I forget about him? Um, so, like, he's been just flat out dominant. Like, we have, like, I'm not just saying this for my interaction, and this is the podcast crowd, so they don't even need to be told this, but, like, anytime you see something Andrew Thomas, retweet it, right? When this Pro Bowl voting stuff starts, go and vote for him a bunch, okay? I know there's not going to be intrigue from Giants fans to vote for the Pro Bowl because we suck, but go vote for Andrew Thomas. Get him into the damn Pro Bowl, and let's get him all pro because he absolutely deserves it. Um, so it's just been a joy to watch that. It's just like, man, every year this is just a constant beast at a position that's hard, dude, man. Like, it's hard to be this good at left tackle consistently.
Do you remember fighting tooth and nail in arguments with people over picking Andrew Thomas over Tristan Wirfs and
Oh, yeah, that was my
Kai
life.
Becton? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think
Tristan Wirfs has been Tristan Wirfs may have Tristan Wirfs is a better career than Andrew Thomas. But yeah, it was intense.
it felt like you and I were alone on that island. Like,
Dude, I was all in on Thomas. Thomas the Train. And then people were like, it's Thomas the Tank Engine, not Thomas the Train. I was like, I guess that nickname is dead. So yeah, it's been a joy to watch Andrew Thomas. Next question.
next question comes from Dates.
Hey, and get him into the Pro Bowl, and I guarantee you I will do an in-person interview at the Pro Bowl with Andrew Thomas.
There you go.
It's only an hour away from me.
Next question comes from Dates and Dead Guys at Dates Dead Guys. That's weird. Listen here, Bobby. Would offensive line play in previous seasons have left Jaxson Dart flattened, or is he legitimate, skillful in pocket awareness, asking for a friend? Probably a dead friend.
So we're turning this into a more general, just let's talk about Jaxson Dart question. But I do want to talk about this, like, the natural feel for the pocket is 100% there, for Jaxson Dart. Like the Bellinger touchdown, the Wandale touchdown against the Eagles last week, the big play this week to Wandale Robinson. Think about all his big runs, right? And he moves up through the pocket, right? I think that's such a huge thing. A lot of guys run out the back of it. He runs up through it. It's leading to scoring points. And on third down, when you need to make a play, he's second and third down EPA per play, only to Daniel Jones. So, like, it's certainly good. That being said, I do think the offensive line is helping. Like, he's responsible for 47% of his pressures, which is the most in the NFL. And the second most is Lamar at 31%. It's like a big drop off to second. He's been sacked 12 times. 10 have been accredited to him. And his sack rate is the sixth highest in the offensive line, sixth highest in the NFL, and it's not the offensive line. So there is some win some, lose some there with Jaxson Dart, but his sacks have not been big yardage losers because he moves up in the pocket, but it's leading to points. So let's talk about Jaxson Dart as a whole, Grump. His season stats, he's completing 60%, 198 yards per game, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 180 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 fumbles. They are scoring 25 points per game under him, which would be 11th in the NFL in scoring. The run game has been third in him. They're 13th in EPA per play under him. His 17 game pace, which I kind of retired doing those early in my content career, but like 60% completion percentage stays, 3,300 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 756 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, 8 fumbles. So, like, where his rankings would be, it'd be 36th in completion percentage. I mean, that's really bad. Only better than Anthony Richardson. 20th in yards, 6th in passing touchdowns, 4th most interceptions, 3rd in quarterback rushing yards and quarterback rushing touchdowns. So some really good ones, some not so good ones, like the interceptions and completion percentage, and then yards is middle of the pack. I mean, we'll talk about, like, there is some things I worry about him long term, but like all of that is like, okay, those are good, some stats, some bad stats. he's doing this against Jesse Minter, the Broncos defense, which was number 2 in the NFL, Brandon Staley, whatever, Vic Fangio, like the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, maybe, and he doesn't have wide receivers. Like he literally doesn't have outside receivers. You got Malik Neighbors for like 3 drives, Slayton for a game and a half, and in half of that game he was a disaster. Like he doesn't have wide receivers on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? He is elevating what looks to be one of the worst skill position groups in the NFL right now, if not the worst, right? Is there a worse current skill position group
I
in the
just
NFL?
don't see there being one with when you have Lil Jordan Humphrey,
Bo
Jalen
Collins, Jalen
Hyatt.
Hyatt.
Like when you like, no disrespect to Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger, when you have to live out of 12 personnel with those as your 2 tight ends, and then Juan Dale is your number 1 receiver, that's a bad receiving group.
No, yeah, absolutely. Um, the pocket feel is definitely there. I think also some of the sacks are he is giving up on a play and starting to scramble and not making it to the line of scrimmage. So he could be like other quarterbacks and run backwards 50 yards and take a sack. But he's not. So even some of the sack, like the high sack totals are he's bailing out of that play and just not making it to the line of scrimmage. Where again, like maybe better wide receivers and he's not bailing out of the play. And we saw even some of his QB scrambles, like you had pointed out in his touchdown against the Eagles that he scrambled for. Theo Johnson runs the wrong route. He's waiting for it, and then he goes the wrong way. It's like, well, that's over with. You know what I mean? Like, so it's really difficult to say how many of those sacks are like, we credit them to him, but without knowing the entire playbook and what should have happened and what did happen, it's really, really difficult to take that very small sample size and extrapolate it over 17 games and come up with like a definitive conclusion, which, we're not really doing that. But to answer this question, the pocket feel is the biggest thing for me where, he definitely has the ability to sling it. He's got his shortcomings with throwing the ball deep down the field. He definitely has his shortcomings with uh what is my biggest concern is what happened at the end of the Broncos game where he just stopped playing offense and you're just launching shit because that's what he did against Florida. And just like against Florida, he threw more interceptions that were dropped that don't end up on the stat sheet and did it again. And that to me worries me. Like you gotta learn to stay cool. There was plenty of time to move down the field. Did you need chunk plays? Absolutely. But did you need a home run? Did you need to throw a home run ball every single play? Absolutely not. So I mean, that to me is a concern, something he needs to work with. But most everything else, I think that he's getting better at week by week, and you can kind of see it. And the pocket feel to me is the most amazing. I had brought this up right after the game against the Eagles. Jahad Campbell just came up with armfuls of air, and it all happened behind him. He just had this instinctive, innate feel to just move to his left at one point without seeing anything. And I think Campbell stood up absolutely confused.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one of those like the pocket feel thing is one of those things you can't quantify, right? Where he can use pressure to sack rate. Those you look at those numbers, they fluctuate every year with quarterbacks. I remember Jones being top 5 and then bought like that's one of those things you can't quantify. It's just kind of one of those things you have to see. Now, the argument to that is like, yeah, but he creates all these sacks. What if the offensive line wasn't playing as well? Like that is a fair counter argument. But right now he's dealing with what he has and he's doing a damn good job at it. Like the quick game has gotten so much better from where he was early and forget even when he starting like training camp, it was terrible. Like he was terrible to begin the training camp running quick game. He's gotten so much better at that. And that gives you hope for other things that he might struggle with that he's going to get better at that. Like blitz pickup stuff. There is still some mess ups here and there. The interception was kind of part of one of those. But like it's certainly gotten better, knowing where to be, knowing where to put your eyes and things of that nature. So and again, he's like he's creating rushing yards, he's making plays as a passer, he has like those magic moments. He's scoring points. Again, that's the name of the game, scoring points, and that's what they're doing. Um, so yeah, there's a lot to be happy about. I do want to talk about the 2 things I worry about. The interception, that was a terrible play by Jaxson Dart on 3 different levels. That's not a long-term worry. Not to say that, like, stuff like that won't happen again or whatever. But like that's something you learn from as a rookie, right? Like they ran an all-out blitz. You should have known it was an all-out blitz. You should have either thrown it up to Wandale. If you didn't and your eyes went to Theo Johnson, you should have thrown it quicker. And then the third part of that is when you don't do those first two things, do not with guys around your feet try and pop a ball over and it gets intercepted. I'm not here that's go on that, even though I think it plays a little bit into the fourth quarter stuff. The fourth quarter was despicable though from Jaxson Dart. Like, and the interception is part of that. That final drive, the only thing I don't want to hear as like he got them down there. And it would have been a game-winning drive, and he had that 4th and 19 throw. The 4th and 19 throw sure was good. That was his worst drive as an NFL pro. And to his credit, I don't think it's even close. You know, the only reason he didn't have an interception is because 2 passes were thrown where literally 2 players on the Broncos were fighting to be the guy who got the interception, and they broke up the pass. And both, there was much better options on it, right? The one on the right sideline, it was 3rd and 19. There was so much green grass. He was literally running up at the line of scrimmage. There was so much green grass, and he might have gotten the first down running. He might have. There was Patrick Surtain there. He at least gets 10-plus rushing yards. Easy. And the way that he runs, and in the moment that it was, he's definitely trying to make one guy miss. So, and again, it's 4th down territory, obviously. The one to Bo Collins in the middle of the field, he totally just pre-planned, decided I'm reading one player. If that one player does what I want, I'm chucking this ball. And he should have seen what it was. He had Jalen Hyatt on the backside dig. He should have thrown that. And it was a badly thrown ball. I do worry about that. And again, coaching is part of this too. But because that's a trend, right? We saw it happen against Florida is the one everyone looks at. But go watch LSU and even Kentucky last year. It's a lot of the same. The Saints game, I know we just look at the 2 interceptions and talk about those individual plays. There was plays before that where he's throwing in the quadruple coverage with 10 minutes left. He then just starts throwing the ball deep. That is a worry of mine. And that's obviously coachable because it's mental. But like Brian Dable has to get to him and say, play the game like you would the first 3 quarters and a half. Because look at and I would use Bo Nix as an example. Bo Nix didn't start pressing, right? Like, they're playing those soft coverages, took the checkdowns, got down the field. Obviously, you're not going to have an insane comeback, but just, like, keep your cool, keep your composure. I don't think it's something that's just like, oh, just fix it and coach it. Like, it's not that, but it's definitely coachable. And then the other one is the deep ball. He's throwing the deep ball just like at Ole Miss at the highest rate in the league. But he's 33rd of 37 in completion rate, and it's not the receiver's fault. He's just been flat out inaccurate. So setting the feet or whatever, some of those balls, he's just got to get better at that. So those are my 2 worries.
Yeah. I have nothing to contradict that. I am going to kind of rope this back into sort of the actual crux of this question here of with the O-line play in previous seasons have left him flattened. I do think that this is the best version. I know like Austin Schlottman had to play in JMS's place, and that's not like, insert your favorite sarcastic joke about JMS, but this group didn't really get to play together for very long last year. And I think that this is the best group of starting 5 that we've seen in a really long time. And
people forget it was good at pass blocking last year too, before Thomas got injured.
Exactly. Yeah. Once the injuries started to pile up, and I absolutely think that Jaxson Dart's movement in the pocket and his skills and getting the ball out and in rhythm and, getting first downs helps make that O-line look better. They get into a rhythm, etc. They do work in tandem, but I want to just kind of keep shining a light on like the starting 5 offensive linemen last year were good. That was not a bad group. They just got hurt early. And at the same time, like other things were not going well either. So yeah, I do think he would have gotten flattened, in years past. This is like the best offensive line starting 5 we've seen in 7 years.
And if you're using the 2023 group, like I know there's a lot of revisionist history with Daniel Jones. I think we were all like that offensive line at like the Miami game, the Dallas game, like was unbearable at times. Like, I remember doing the game by game recap of Jones that year, and you remember some games were really bad, some games weren't, but that was a pretty brutal unit. So, but right now they're playing well, and that's a good thing, and it keeps your quarterback confident. That's the last thing I want is like, oh, well, how would it be with a bad O-line? I don't know. I'd like him to get confidence with a good O-line as a rookie, and maybe if he's dealing with a bad offensive line a year and a half from now, he's more confident to deal with it and not ruined by it as a rookie. So thank God we have this offensive line blocking the way it is right now for Dart.
Yeah, agreed. Next question comes from Deke Freak 72. How's Flott looking at cornerback 2? Would you give him an extension to be cornerback 2?
I'm gonna let you lead the way. You had a post on Flott today. I want you to lead the way on this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to do like a weekly focus, and it was hard for me to not notice Cordale Flott immediately in this game. It just jumped right out that they kind of seem to have a game plan. It's just like, don't worry about Paulson and Debo. This is our matchup that we're going to try and exploit, because they went after him and it just wasn't working. And it seemed like it was pre-planned going after him. They targeted him 10 times in this game. He got 3 passes defended on those 10. And the only 2 completions he gave up was one really good pass along the sideline to Troy Franklin at the end of the game. And one that he was kind of in like a switch coverage on the outside, playing really far off and on a quick slant. Where he kind of just charged in and made a tackle, also in the 4th quarter. He's playing lights out right now. And, I've been kind of a Cordale Flott guy for a while now, and I would say like a defender, because there's a very small sample size, right? Like it's plenty fair to be like, this is just a couple of games now. Obviously, he had the pick last week. I didn't even bring that up, but I'm sure that's fresh in Giants fans' minds as well. But he kept getting pigeonholed into the slot. And from the day he was drafted, I think I even did like a video like ages ago. I was like, you know what? I think this is a really good draft pick. This is not a guy I was paying attention to. He kind of got forced to play the slot a little bit at LSU. Then he kind of moved around. I'm looking at his body type and the way he plays. I think he's a better fit for the outside. And then for like years, I felt like I was the only one saying like, I play him on the outside. I wouldn't put him in the slot personally. But he does have that sort of slot versatility. If, all the wrong things happen and you have to start shuffling guys, you can also do that. But to me, he looks aggressive on the outside, and he's not a perfect player. I'm not here to say that. But he is still super young. He's 24 years old now. There are rookies coming out of college that are 24 years old. I would say like the other really big issues with him, like he does have some mental lapses here and there, but again, the sample size of him playing outside corner at the NFL level is really, really small. So there's still experience to be gained. He seems like a bright kid. The other really big concern is that he's like 150 pounds soaking wet, and tackling is a little bit of an issue. But I would rather have a guy in position and willing to make a tackle that is unable to physically be a dominant tackler than be a guy like Deonte Banks, who has all the physical attributes to be a good tackler and is consistently losing contain and is just not even there. Because at the very least, you can get your arms around somebody and hold them up long enough for the rest of the troops to rally and make the tackle. So for me, I would be trying to work out what an extension looks like. I'd be talking to his agent personally right around now, just getting the preliminary feelers out there, preliminary numbers, because of the small sample size and the really young age and the injury history, it's really difficult to find a comparable contract out there. And I think that you can get him for probably, I think his highest, this is the most he's ever gotten paid. Is this year, and it's like $3.6 million, right? I think you could probably pay him $5 million a year, and you might be able to get away with that.
Yeah, and if it's like, if he's not playing at this level, like you're okay, I'm okay with that contract. Because he has the 4th most pass breakups this year, as an interception. Like this game was truly beautiful. Like he had the pass breakup on a play where the middle field safety is supposed to help him, wasn't there, makes up for it. That corner route, like, and then the Banks touchdown. Like he's just playing confidently. Like you said, there has been like in zone, he had kind of been terrible every year up until this year, and the mental mistakes and stuff. And hey, you could go look at the Eagles game and say he almost gave up a back-breaking touchdown against Devontae Smith, making a mental error, right? Didn't just get beat on a play. So like I'm sure there's still some question marks with that, but like, and man coverage, he is just playing so confidently. And this past weekend zone coverage, he looked awesome too. So, um, yeah, he's been a joy to watch. So, um,
How absurd is it that we're having this conversation about a guy who had to fight for a roster spot,
I was-
earned it, and then still didn't earn it?
I was just gonna say that. I was like, this is a guy who wasn't even the full-time starter 2 weeks ago, and it was losing the Giants games because of it. All right. Next question. Make the next question the last question.
Okay. Okay. Next question is from Rumpelstiltskin89. Rumpel's still cool. Say Gano is cleared to play, but injures himself in warmups. Could they call up Koo from the practice squad, or is there a cutoff time for calling up the practice squad? This is a clear-cut answer.
Answer it. Right?
Yeah, you have to announce the elevations on Saturday, right?
Yep.
So it's like 24 hours before the game or something like that. So no, if Gano injures himself, Koo has to be already elevated and on the active roster.
Yeah, so you can't do that. Now, what you could do is, yes, keep Koo elevated up until game day warmups. Dude, I can't believe they're gonna try and put Graham Gano back as the kicker. Do people not remember how bad he was when he was trying to battle through injuries? He was terrible in 23 and 24 trying to deal with injuries. And we have a huge sample size of him saying, "Oh, I'm good," and him not being actually good.
I've done a pretty good job of not blowing a gasket, I think. And I really, really want to. But I'm just gonna point out that like at the beginning of the year, like Pat Leonard reported that like I forget exactly what he said, but it was like at practice, he's like, Graham Gano is not doing anything. And I was like, yo, this is concerning. And a bunch of people got in my face about it. It was like, I don't care. He's a kicker. He could be playing checkers all practice for all I care. I was like, I fucking care. I care. Okay. Because there is precedent here that this is bad news. And I think I might have been right. Right.
I'm gonna just see. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we don't need to reopen it, and I didn't even plan on talking about kicker on the mailbag, but I was like, it came out. Paul Schwartz is like, he's gonna kick today, and they're gonna see where he's at. Like, oh god, it's like they're doing it again. They're freaking doing it again. I want to see the replies to that tweet. Do you remember any of the keywords from that tweet?
No, I mean, but it was right before week 1. I think it was right whenever practices start getting closed to the media. So that's got to be like very early September, right?
Yes, but I don't want to. I'm trying to. Hold
It's
on.
gonna be really hard searching.
I'm trying to
Gano
stall.
on my Twitter.
Come on, where you have a lot of tweets about Gano. I can't.
I was gonna say,
We're gonna do a kicker preview this year on the draft. It might be a Patreon exclusive because obviously no one's gonna listen to that. But we might just do a 20-minute like kicker power rankings for the channel this year
for this upcoming off season.
for the draft. Yeah,
Well, I mean, even after the draft, I mean, I know people probably know this about me is like I'm a huge spring football dork, so I'll come with names and stats ready to go even after spring football because those guys come cheap. And I just saw an article that like Brandon Aubrey is getting ready to like reset the kicker market.
that Packers kicker that's like killing it the last 2 weeks. He was part of the workouts when Gano got injured. So
Yeah, I saw that. Dan Duggan said that. That was a real shot to the nuts.
So I just can't believe it. All right, so that's an episode. We're back on Friday for a preview. Eagles, hey, we've beat the Eagles coming off of a devastating loss once before this year. Let's freaking do it again, man. So
When was the last time we swept the Eagles?
I actually had that bookmarked for the preview pod on Friday.
All right, there you go. There's your teaser.
And tweeted it out. So you're gonna have to wait till Friday, and I will let you know the last time they did that. But there's some good correlation. So all right, we will see you guys on Friday. Until then, let's go Big Blue.